Today, we're going to talk about something really personal and often invisible. We're going to explore the lifelong echo of being raised by a narcissistic parent. And this isn't just about looking back at a tough childhood. It's about understanding the very architecture of your inner world, especially where that critical voice in your head, the one you think is yours, actually came from.
So let's start with a memory. I want you to just take a second and think about the last time you did something you were truly, genuinely proud of. It doesn't have to be some huge, life-changing event. Maybe you got a promotion, or you finished a really hard project, or hey, maybe you just nailed a new recipe. Just try to get back into that feeling, that sense of real, personal pride.
Okay, you got that memory? Now, who was the first person you wanted to share it with? Who was the one you immediately thought of? The person you reached for your phone to call, or the one you couldn't wait to see to tell them your good news?
And now for the really important part. I want you to play that conversation back in your head. What was their reaction? Was it that shared joy, that excitement you were hoping for? Or was it something else? Something less?
If thinking about that moment brings up that old, familiar ache, you know the one I'm talking about, that quiet deflation, that subtle feeling that your big news was kind of brushed aside or even turned into something about them, well, then you're in the right place. That feeling, it has a story, and we're about to give it a name.
To really get how this whole pattern starts, let's zoom in on a story. It's a pretty common one, actually, and it might even feel a little familiar. For our story, we'll call our guy James.
So if you looked at James from the outside, you'd think, wow, this guy has it all figured out. He's always been a high achiever. He's respected at work. His friends think he's the kindest, most reliable person they know. But on the inside, it's a totally different story. James lives with this relentless voice in his head, a harsh inner critic. No matter what he accomplishes, that voice is right there, pointing out what he did wrong or why it wasn't that big of a deal. It's always whispering, yeah, but you could have done better. This isn't really good enough.
And, after years and years of living with this voice, James has just accepted it. He thinks it's just a part of his personality. He might even think it's what makes him successful, that this constant self-criticism is what pushes him to do better. He's never really stopped to ask where it came from. He just assumes it's his.
But here's the thing, and this is maybe the most important thing you'll hear today. That voice, it is not who he is. It's not some baked-in personality trait. It's the result of a long, quiet, and really confusing training program that started way back when he was a kid. That voice was installed.
So what is this training program? To understand it, we need to shift gears a little, from this personal story to the clinical framework behind it. We need to give a name to the invisible rules that might have been running your family.
Okay, so let's break this down. Narcissistic parenting isn't just about a parent being a bit selfish sometimes. It's a whole dynamic. The core of it, the absolute center, is a profound lack of empathy. The parent is basically incapable of seeing the child as a separate person with their own feelings and needs. Why? Because their own need for admiration, for what's called narcissistic supply, is like a black hole. So in this system, the child's job isn't to grow and become themselves. Their job is to make the parent feel good about themselves.
And to keep their own ego from falling apart, the narcissistic parent often does this thing where they split their kids into roles. You've got the golden child, who can do no wrong. They're the one who has to carry all the parent's hopes and dreams and make them look good. Then you have the scapegoat. This child becomes the family dumpster for all the things the parent hates about themselves, their shame, their failures, their anger. It's so important to get this. These roles have nothing to do with who the kids actually are. It's all about what the parent needs them to be to feel stable.
And it's not just one person, right? It's a whole system. You've got the narcissist at the center who needs that constant validation. Then there's often an enabler, maybe the other parent, whose job is to keep the peace by pretending the dysfunction isn't happening. The golden child carries this massive burden of perfection, always terrified of falling from grace. And the scapegoat, they carry all the family's pain and are blamed for everything, which often leads to really deep psychological wounds. The entire system is built to serve the narcissist, even if it's completely crushing the kids inside it.
Think about it like this. In a healthy family, love is the ground you stand on. It's safe. It's constant. In a narcissistic family, love is a currency. It's used as a tool. It's given out when you perform well or do what a parent wants, and it's snatched away the second you don't. So, as a kid, you learn really fast that your value isn't a given. It's something you have to earn every single day. And that creates this deep, gnawing anxiety and this constant need to please everyone. And this one, This one is so subtle and so damaging, it's called parentification. It's when the whole thing gets flipped upside down, and the child has to become the parent's emotional caretaker. You become their therapist, their best friend, the person who has to manage their moods. You learn to swallow your own feelings, your own needs, because you have to keep your parent from falling apart. You basically give up your own childhood to hold theirs together.
So all of this stuff, the roles, the conditional love, having to be the parent, it leaves these deep, invisible wounds. And they don't just magically heal when you move out. They become the blueprint for how you operate as an adult.
Just look at this list. Does any of it sound familiar? That nagging feeling that you're never quite good enough? That's the echo of a parent who always moved the goalposts. Always scanning people's faces for approval. That's what you learn when love is conditional. That absolute terror of conflict? That comes from a childhood where any disagreement felt like a major threat. And being unable to actually enjoy your own successes? That's because you learn your successes were never really for you. They were for them. The people-pleasing, the inability to say no. These are the habits of a child who learned that their survival depended on making everyone else happy.
And this right here, this is the most powerful shift in perspective you can make. If you recognized yourself on that list, I really need you to hear this. These are not your personality flaws. This is not who you are at your core. They are brilliant, adaptive strategies that your little kid brain came up with to survive a very confusing and painful environment. Your people-pleasing kept you safe. Your ability to read a room protected you. These were acts of survival. They were heroic.
So, once you start to see these patterns not as your failings, but as your old armor, you can start the real work, the work of reclaiming your own story. Healing doesn't mean you forget the past. It means you finally get to be the one holding the pen.
I want you to just sit with that for a second. That inner critic, the one that sounds so convincing, the one that sounds just like you, it's a recording. It's an echo. It's a message you heard so many times from someone else that you accidentally memorized it, but it was never, ever the truth about you. And that's the painful reality at the heart of all of this. It was never really about you. It was about them. The impossible standards, the criticism, the control, all of it came from a deep, profound emptiness in the parent. They needed a child to be their mirror, to carry their shame, to be their emotional support system. Anything other than a separate person who needed to be loved for who they were.
This is where the change begins. The moment you can hear that critical thought and say, wait a minute, that's not me. That's my mother's anxiety. Or that's not the truth. That's my father's voice. That's the moment you start to get free. You create a tiny bit of space between you and the criticism. You see it for what it is, just an echo. And in that little bit of space, that's where your power is. So where do you start? It can feel overwhelming. Here are 3 real, practical things you can start doing. First, recognize and label. When that inner critic pops up, call it out, give it a name, and start to label the old tactics. Was that gaslighting? Was that scapegoating? Naming it takes away its power. Second, acknowledge your survival. Look at those parts of you, the people pleaser, the conflict avoider, and instead of shame, try to feel some compassion. Thank them. They got you through. And third, and this is so important, celebrate your wins, no matter how small. You have to intentionally, consciously practice self-approval. You are literally building a new voice inside your head, a new neural pathway, a voice that is finally truly yours.
Let me say that again. You're not put on this planet to fix your parents' problems, or achieve their broken dreams, or manage their emotions. That was never your job. You are officially released from that assignment. Your story doesn't have to be defined by their limitations. Your story starts right now with this new understanding. You get to have your own feelings, your own successes, your own life. You are, and you have always been, your own beginning.